Part 1. The Seventh Step. It had been 4 days of walking, tracing an unnamed route in the Arfak Mountains. The military map marked it only with a faded gray, as if the place itself had never truly been acknowledged. Leda Mondoy led the small unit, accompanied by 2 young soldiers, Elosak, a quiet and steadfast soldier from Tambrau, and Yauwry, a soldier from Sorong who was more impulsive, often anxious when silence stretched too long. That day was incredibly quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, not even the wind dared to pass. The path they took wasn't ordinary soil. It was a row of black stones, stretching forward like hardened steps, naturally formed yet too precise to be left without question. Long and curving, cutting through thickets and mist, as if guiding them into the mouth of something older than the mountain itself. Leda Mondoy knew at the moment the first step felt icy beneath his boots. The second step changed the smell of the earth. It turned damp like the air of a cave holding old corpses. The third step made Yauwry halt. The birds that had briefly chirped disappeared. Since then, there were no sounds at all. Elosak looked back. Mist slowly crept along the path they had taken. The world began to shrink, swallowing their tracks. The fourth step. Clouds above shifted rapidly, moving against the wind. The fifth step. The air filled with the scent of iron, like old blood. Yauwry grew restless. He wiped his temple, his eyes reddening. Elosak stayed silent, lips murmuring. Whether a prayer or a warning, no one knew. The sixth step. Leda Mondoy's skin itched, as if a subtle current crawled beneath his flesh. He paused briefly, inhaled deeply. Then, as if there was no other choice, he stepped onto the seventh stone. The stone pulsed faintly red beneath his feet, as if responding to his weight. Mist rose swiftly from below, wrapping around them up to their chests. This wasn't the cool morning fog of the mountain. It was dense, damp, heavy, like the breath of something asleep and just beginning to dream a nightmare. The sky shifted, from cold blue to deep purple. Black roots dangled from above like the jaws of a prehistoric plant. The path behind them vanished, replaced by walls of mist and shadows. The path ahead, darker than black. Yauwry stepped back, but the stone beneath his foot disappeared. He nearly fell if not for Elosak grabbing him. They were trapped. Then came a voice, not from a single direction. The voice felt like it rose from within their own chests, deep, heavy, and without words. Yet they understood, as if the meaning slipped straight into their minds without needing translation. 6 trials, 1 way home. Those who fail will not be known, even by death. Mondoy tried to speak. His voice wouldn't come out. His throat felt clogged, as if filled with mud. He could only look ahead, gripping his weapon, now as heavy as stone. Elosak gazed upward. In the purple sky, the moon was split into 3. Not like broken metal shards, but as if carved from within, 3 uneven arcs floating, each pulsing light like a heartbeat. The 7th step wasn't just the final stone. It was a threshold, and they had just crossed it. Part 2. The hearing trial. The swirling mist began to hiss softly, not like wind or animals, but like a voice that hadn't finished forming words. Amidst the ear-splitting silence, sounds began to emerge, slowly, crawling, slipping into the cracks of their minds. Not shouts, not panicked calls, but whispers, familiar whispers, too familiar. Elosak, come home, son. Mama's waiting at home. I've cooked your favorite fried fish. Elosak's step froze. His breath caught. His eyes welled up. The voice was too real, too full of memory. Beside him, Yauwry halted, softly sobbing. Lieutenant, that's Commandant Rico's voice. He's calling me. Is he still alive? Leda Mondoy looked around. The mist around them seemed to swell, forming faint silhouettes of old faces. Not clear, but enough to shake anyone's heart. He stepped closer to Yauwry, gripping his shoulder firmly. That's not them. That's you. Listen to your steps, not their voices. But the voices kept coming. Some laughed, some sang. Even tiny footsteps, like children playing nearby. Sounds from the past, from wounds that hadn't healed. Elosak covered his ears, but the voice still echoed from inside. Yauwry bowed his head, his body trembling. Leda Mondoy straightened his back. took a deep breath, and led them forward. Follow your breathing. Don't let them speak deeper. If you listen too long, you might forget your own voice. Their steps grew heavier. Every movement felt like resisting a soft pull that wanted them to stay. But slowly they kept moving. No one spoke, only the sound of boots tapping wet stone. When the voices finally faded, the mist loosened a little. The air returned to silence, but not a peaceful silence, a silence full of vibrations. Beneath their feet, the first stone glowed faintly, deep red, with thin vein-like lines spreading like pulses. But the guilt hadn't left. It clung to the back of their necks, heavy and cold, waiting for its moment to speak again. Part 3. The Step Trial. The mist receded slightly, only to reveal something more terrifying than darkness. Emptiness. In front of them, the stones ended. No bridge, no ground, just a still, black void. Deep, waiting. Letta Mondoy slowly crouched down, picked up a small stone, and threw it forward. There was no sound of it landing, no echo, as if the space swallowed everything. "This isn't an ordinary chasm," he murmured. Suddenly, from the right, footsteps echoed. Tech, tech, tech. But when they turned, no one was there. The sound stopped abruptly. Silence ensnared them again. "We can only cross if we hear the echo of our own steps," Elosak said quietly. "But if the mind breaks, can we still trust our own sound?" Yauwry stared ahead. He gripped his weapon tightly, then stepped forward. No echo. His step hung in the air. His body froze. His knees began to tremble. His breathing turned erratic. "Yauwry, don't panic," Mondoy urged. But even his voice sounded distant, as if swallowed by the air. Elosak grabbed Yauwry's hand. "Your step isn't an outside sound. Listen to your body. Remember your heartbeat's rhythm. If you hesitate, this world will swallow you first." Yauwry closed his eyes. Elosak followed. They began stepping together, slowly, unhurried. Only the sound of breath and the faint whisper of their chests. Tech, one step. Tech, tech. Another step followed. The echo was faint, but there, they kept walking, hands still holding each other, their eyes occasionally opening, just to make sure something real still lay ahead. Letta Mondoy followed behind them, his gaze focused but one hand always ready to catch either of them if they fell. After 12 steps, a flat stone appeared again. They reached the other side. The second stone glowed. Red light like pulsing veins spread toward the edge of the next path. But they knew the chasm wasn't just about courage to cross, but about trust in one's inner voice. And when that voice began to falter, this world wouldn't hesitate to take over. Part 4. The Inner Fire Trial. The mist opened a path to an open plain. The ground was dry and cracked, like the skin of a giant creature that had been asleep for too long. Glowing red fissures formed irregular patterns. The heat didn't burn the skin, but pierced from within the chest, forcing everything buried in the heart to surface uncontrollably. "Quiet. Everyone, quiet," whispered Letta Mondoy. But his voice was drowned by a soft hissing, like embers breathing. Suddenly, from the earth, a circle of fire appeared. Not a large flame, just a calm glow. But within that light, shadows emerged. Elosak stared into the blaze. The shadow of his drowned younger brother appeared before him. The child looked at him from within the fire, reaching out a small hand. His mouth opened, but no sound came out, only smoke. Elosak sank to the ground. I'm sorry I didn't save you." Elsewhere, Mondoy saw Losa, the young soldier who had died under his command. Losa's shadow called softly, "Letta, why did you make me advance back then? I wasn't ready to die." Yauwry let out a faint cry. His body froze. He saw himself in the fire, but younger, cleaner. The figure looked back at him from inside and whispered, "You could have turned back, but you chose to stay. Why?" The three soldiers fell into their own silent battles. No words, only heavy breaths. Amidst the inner turmoil, Elosak, still staring into the fire, saw something else. A wisp of different mist appeared on the right. From within it, a young man stepped out. His hair was wet, his clothes tattered, his eyes vacant. Elosak's eyes widened. That wasn't part of the fire. It stood outside. The boy didn't speak, but in Elisak's mind, a voice echoed, "You're close, but not everyone knows the way out. Be careful. After fire, the voice will follow." Then the figure vanished. The mist slowly swallowed him. Only wet footprints remained on the ground, prints that didn't evaporate, even on the burning soil. Elisak clutched his chest. He knew this wasn't a hallucination. This wasn't an ordinary spirit. It was Elmo. The third stone lit up. The flames subsided, but the wounds they uncovered didn't fade. Part 5. The Blood Trial. Their steps felt heavy as they left the fiery plain. No one spoke. Their faces dark, not because of the mist, but because of what they had just seen and admitted to themselves. The path led into a narrow passage between two towering stone walls. At its center stood a black altar, made of stone unlike the others. Smooth, cold, and carved into it, rough inscriptions read, "What remains unspoken will bind the soul, release it, or be bound forever." Yauwry stepped forward first. He stood before the altar, hands trembling. His lips quivered. His breath came short, but he spoke. "When the outpost was attacked, I hid. I knew Adnan was outside. I heard him calling for help, but I stayed quiet. I was scared. No one judged, no one spoke, but the stone on the altar slowly glowed, red, as if accepting his confession." Elisak stepped forward next. His voice was low. "I pretended to sleep when my mother was sick. She kept calling for me, but I was tired. I left her alone that night. By morning, she was gone." He couldn't finish, but the altar had heard enough. The stone beneath it pulsed. Leda Mandoy was last. He looked up at the sky, a sky no longer blue but hanging like a wounded canvas. "I sent Losa to Delta Point. I knew it was risky, but I needed the report. He didn't come back. I knew, but I stayed silent on the radio. I didn't call for backup." The third stone lit up. Crimson cracks spread like awakening veins. Then Elisak looked up. He saw a blurred figure between the two stone walls, hair disheveled, a thin body, vacant eyes, damp. It was Elmo, standing still, saying nothing, but his presence pressed heavy on Elisak's chest. "Why do you keep appearing?" Elisak whispered. But Elmo didn't answer. He turned slowly, then stepped backward into the mist. Only wet footprints remained. They didn't evaporate. The fourth stone lit up. The stone walls shuddered faintly. A path ahead opened, but now their guilt wasn't just a burden. It became a reminder that not all wounds can be forgiven by time. Part 6. The Mirror of Earth Trial. After passing through the narrow corridor, they arrived at a vast expanse slick like wet mud, yet without any smell. The ground was like black glass, reflecting a colorless sky. As they stepped onto its surface, their footsteps sounded strange, too slow, like echoes held back. When they looked down, their reflections appeared. But these were no ordinary reflections. Yauwry froze. The version of himself beneath was much older, wearing a tattered military uniform soaked in blood, his right hand holding a dripping knife, his red eyes filled with rage. The reflection didn't mirror his movements but stood still, as if waiting for him to return. "You think you can bury your wounds?" whispered the reflection. "You know, you were born from blood." Yauwry swallowed hard, stepping half a step back, but the ground shifted with him, forcing him closer again. Leda Mandoy saw himself sitting atop a pile of bones, broken helmets, bent bayonets, hands drenched in blood. His face was blank, empty. His gaze looked as if he had lost all desire to live or die. "How many have you sacrificed?" Mandoy's reflection asked. "What's left of you besides orders?" Elisak was the last to look. Beneath, he saw himself standing tall among enemy ranks, slowly burning his company's flag. His face laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was the laugh of someone who delighted in destroying himself. But the most terrifying thing? The reflection stared back, knocking from beneath the mirrored surface, as if asking to trade places. Both hands of the reflection began clawing the underside of the glassy earth, creating slow, creeping cracks. "You belong here," the reflection of Elisak said, its voice low, almost like a murmur from deep inside the chest. Elisak began to lean down. His hand moved unconsciously toward the surface. His fingertips nearly touched the shadow. The mist began swirling. The air grew colder. "Elisak!" Yauwry shouted. He lunged forward, grabbing Elisak roughly. They both tumbled onto the hard ground. The reflection hissed, and the ground beneath them shattered like glass smashed from inside. Leta Mandoy moved swiftly, pulling them both back. The ground before them darkened, reflecting nothing. But they knew. Something still lived beneath it. The fifth stone glowed. Red light cracked and spread like veins toward the field's edges. But inside their chests, their darker selves hadn't disappeared. They were only sleeping, waiting. Before they left, Elisak glanced back one last time. At the edge of the fading mirror, he saw something move. It wasn't his reflection. It was Elmo. He stood still behind the glass, expressionless, just staring. He didn't try to come out, didn't speak, but it was enough to make Elisak quickly turn away and quicken his steps. Part 7. The Sacrifice Trial. They walked slowly. The sky now hung lower, enveloping them in a dense darkness. The mist thickened, suffocating. Before them lay 4 stone corridors, all of them dark. No signs, no sounds, only silence that felt loud inside their heads. Leta Mandoy opened his logistics bag. He pulled out an emergency lamp from Inlight, bought from Toko P3 on Ahmad Yani Street, Sarong City. Its bright light seemed to struggle against the darkness that refused to be pierced. He aimed it at each corridor. 3 corridors swallowed the light. 1 corridor reflected it, as if refusing to absorb. "Only one remains real," he murmured softly. Suddenly, Karakai appeared from the mist. The guardian of the spirit world was tall, thin, his skin like mossy stone, his eyes vacant, his voice deep and heavy, shaking their chests. "Only 2 may leave. 1 must stay. This world must remain balanced. The willing will be freed. The unwilling will be bound forever." Yauwry took a short breath. "Let me. I'll stay." "No," Elisak protested, his eyes glassy. "It should be me." Leta Mandoy stepped forward, his hand lifted slowly. "Enough. I brought you here. I chose this path. I'm responsible." "Leta!" they both cried together, but Mandoy just smiled faintly. "You still have many paths ahead. I have reached my end here." Karakai approached, his shadow enveloping Mandoy. The glowing corridor began to open. The mist slowly receded, forming a narrow passage. "You 2 go. Remember, never repeat the 7th step," Mandoy instructed. Yauwry and Elisak stepped into the corridor. As their feet touched the ground, Karakai's voice echoed in the air. "The willing will be freed. The unwilling will be forgotten." The 6th and 7th stones lit up together. Cracks of red light spread swiftly across the earth. The glowing corridor closed slowly behind them. Yauwry turned, eyes filled with tears. But only mist remained. No sound, no shadow. They knew. Mandoy had stayed, and the spirit world now held one more soul. Part 8, Epilogue. The Dream Queen. That night at the guard post on the slopes of Arfak, Elisak sat alone on an old wooden bench. A small in-light lamp glowed dimly in the corner of the post, the only light that remained in the darkness. The sky was empty, no stars. The air seemed to hold its breath, too still to be called an ordinary night. Mist slowly crept from the mountain path, not thick, but enough to make the road's outline gradually disappear. Elisak gazed toward the end of the path, and there a figure appeared, a woman, tall, her long hair trailing down, brushing the ground, her skin pale gray, as if painted with ash, her eyes vacant, black like bottomless pits. She stood motionless, not touching the ground, simply watching. The Dream Queen. Elmo opened a gap, her voice came, soft yet filling the air. "You merely passed through, but the roots we guard are beginning to stir. The real world can't hold them much longer." Beneath her feet, the ground cracked open. Black roots stretched out, forming a spiral. At the center of the spiral, an eye opened, the same eye Elisak had seen in the spirit world. You won one night, she continued, but this world has many other nights. The Dream Queen bowed slowly, her eyes blinking languidly, then vanished into the mist. The air fell silent again. Only the small in-light lamp continued to glow faintly. Elisak took a deep breath. He lowered his gaze to the wooden floor of the post. There were wet footprints. They didn't evaporate. "Elmo," he whispered. The sky remained empty, no stars, but the mist still moved as if unwilling to ever truly leave. The step has been taken, but the dream is just beginning.